The wind carried the smell of smoke long before. She saw the horizon flicker, with orange flames. Little by little, the world she had known, the village where her parents had raised her, where she had learned to laugh and run and dream, was being swallowed by fire. Her heart hammered in her chest, a frantic drumbeat of fear and disbelief. She could barely recognize the shapes of the homes she had known since childhood. Roofs collapsed like paper, wooden walls cracked and split, and the screams of neighbors and kin intertwined with the crackling blaze, creating a chaos she would never forget. She stumbled through the dirt roads, lungs burning from smoke, hair singed and eyes stinging. Every step was agony, but she couldn't stop. There was no time for tears, only the desperate need to survive, to find someone, anyone, to help. Her tiny frame moved faster than her mind could comprehend. As if instinct alone guided her limbs, she darted around fallen beams and glowing embers, the smell of burning wood and skin filling her senses with a nauseating, painful reality. Her village had been attacked without warning. Raiders, she realized, had descended upon them like shadows in the night. She didn't know why, didn't understand the cruelty. But the question was irrelevant now. Survival mattered. She crawled through the dirt, barely able to lift herself. Her body scorched in places, her skin raw and aching. Every inhale was thick with smoke, every exhale a reminder of how close death had come. Hours, or maybe minutes, passed, time indistinguishable in the chaos. She kept crawling, driven by the faint hope that someone, somehow, would be left alive to help her. Her legs ached, her hands were burned, her stomach empty, but still she pressed forward. And then, amidst the devastation, a figure appeared on the ridge above the village, a warrior. Not just any man, but a presence that seemed to rise out of the smoke itself. Calm and resolute, his eyes scanning the burning homes with a calculating intensity. The Apache warrior had been tracking the raiders for days, following whispers of their movements and the trails of their destruction. He was no stranger to blood or sorrow, but even his seasoned heart twisted at the sight before him. Among the smoldering ruins, a small figure moved, a girl, barely able to keep herself upright, crawling toward what she hoped was safety. Her clothes were torn and blackened, her hair singed and hanging in tangled strands, her face streaked with soot and tears. She did not notice him at first. Her focus was entirely on survival, on the next step, the next breath.
"Hey," he called softly.
His voice cutting through the smoke like a blade, calm but firm. She froze, panic rising again, her eyes wide and untrusting. Her body stiffened, ready to flee even though she had nowhere left to run. But he did not approach recklessly. He dropped to one knee, his movements deliberate and measured, showing no threat, only the possibility of aid. "Come, here," he said again, gentler this time. "You're safe now." It took a moment for her mind to process, for the tiny spark of hope to ignite amidst despair. Slowly, cautiously, she inched forward, each movement a testament to her will to survive. The warrior extended his hand, and though she hesitated, she finally grasped it. The warmth of human contact a shock to her frozen nerves. He lifted her gently, noting the burns and cuts across her small frame. "You've been through much," he murmured, scanning her injuries. "But you're alive." She did not speak, could not speak. Words failed her. She only clung to him, every ounce of fear and exhaustion finding solace in his presence. The smoke swirled around them, but here, for the first time in hours, she felt the possibility of safety. He carried her away from the ruins, moving with a careful urgency. The village behind them continued to burn, a stark reminder of all that had been lost. But he did not look back. Ahead, the terrain grew rugged, dotted with cliffs and forest, a landscape he knew well. He would find a place to tend her wounds, to shield her from the cold night, to give her a moment to breathe and regain strength. The girl shivered against him, silent, broken, yet still alive. The warrior did not rush her recovery. He understood patience, understood the fragility of life when confronted with such unrelenting loss. He would wait. He would protect. And somehow, amidst the ashes, a bond began to form, a silent promise that she would not face the darkness alone. As night fell, the stars above cast faint light across the rugged land. He set her down beside a stream, carrying water to her lips and gently dabbing soot from her skin. Her eyes, wide with awe and disbelief, met his, and though no words were exchanged, an understanding passed between them. They were survivors, bound in the unspoken agreement to endure. And in that quiet, amid the haunting echoes of what had been destroyed, the warrior whispered to her, You are not alone anymore. The fire behind them still raged, but for the first time, she allowed herself a fragile breath of hope. The night had settled over the rugged landscape, but sleep did not come easily for either of them. The girl, shivering under a rough blanket the Apache warrior had wrapped around her shoulders, stared at the faint glimmer of stars above. She could still smell the smoke from her village, could still hear the distant crackle of flames, and every memory of screams and chaos clung to her mind like shadows. Yet, for the first time, she felt the presence of someone who would not let her face this alone. The warrior sat nearby, a fire crackling between them. His gaze was fixed on the horizon, scanning for any sign of danger. Yet his thoughts were elsewhere. He had seen too many lives end violently, too many innocents lost, and though his exterior remained stoic, his heart twisted at the sight of this small girl, alone and terrified. Her resilience, crawling through fire and ash to survive, struck a chord in him he had not expected. He understood pain. He understood loss. And he understood the fragility of hope in a world that often showed none. "Do you speak?" he finally asked, breaking the silence. His voice was low, measured, careful not to startle her. She shook her head, eyes wide and wary, unsure if words could carry her truth. She had seen too much, endured too much to risk speaking yet. He nodded, as if expecting her silence. "Then we will let it pass for now. You do not need words to be heard." Hours turned into moments of quiet companionship. He tended to her injuries, cleaning the burns and covering them with bandages made from what he could find. He offered her water and small bits of food, watching patiently as she nibbled, her hands trembling from exhaustion and fear. Gradually, she began to lean into his presence, the weight of despair lifting just slightly as the understanding grew that she was not alone. Morning came, tinged with the orange glow of dawn, and the reality of survival demanded movement. They had to find a safe place, away from the path of the raiders who had destroyed her home. The warrior guided her through dense forest, over rocky hills and across rushing streams. With each step she grew stronger, though her body still bore the marks of trauma. He encouraged her gently, never forcing, always watching, always protecting. As they moved deeper into the wilderness, he spoke of the world around them, teaching her to notice signs of animals, to find water, to remain unseen. She listened, absorbing every word, and slowly, fragments of her own strength returned. She realized that even though the village was gone, even though everything familiar had been taken from her, survival was still possible. She could rise from the ashes, not as a victim, but as someone who carried the strength to endure. Days passed. They encountered signs of the raiders, trails, remnants of campfires, but the warrior guided her carefully, avoiding confrontation, teaching her to be alert but not consumed by fear. At night they shared stories, silent at times, words unnecessary. He spoke of honor, of family, of the importance of protecting what was right, not out of vengeance but out of duty. She began to trust him, her guarded heart opening slowly to the warmth of human connection. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the mountains, they came upon a small clearing. In the middle, a stream shimmered in the fading light, and for the first time since the fire, the girl allowed herself to smile. She dipped her hands into the cool water, letting the liquid cleanse her wounds, both physical and emotional. The warrior watched quietly, knowing that this moment of peace was as important as any battle or survival lesson. But peace, as it always does in a world scarred by violence, could not last forever. In the distance, the sound of hooves and shouting reached them. Raiders. They had tracked the girl, perhaps sensing that she had survived, perhaps seeking revenge for their own pride. The warrior's eyes hardened. He had taught her to survive, but now he would teach her to fight, not with weapons, necessarily, but with courage, with strategy, with unyielding will. He crouched beside her, whispering instructions. "Stay low. Follow my lead. Trust in what you have learned." Together they moved silently through the underbrush, avoiding open paths, using the terrain to their advantage. The raiders passed without seeing them, their arrogance blinding them to the careful movements of two determined survivors. The girl's heart pounded, but with each step, she felt herself becoming stronger, more capable, no longer entirely defined by fear. When the danger had passed, they emerged into another clearing, this one bathed in golden light. The warrior finally looked at her, his expression softening. "You are ready," he said. "Not because the world will be easy, but because you have the strength to face it." Tears flowed freely now, not from fear but from relief, from gratitude, from the knowledge that even in the darkest moments, hope could survive. She turned to him, words finally finding their way through the weight of silence. "Thank you for saving me." He nodded, a faint smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. "You saved yourself too. I only guided the way." In the days that followed, they continued to travel together, forging a bond deeper than words could express. The warrior became both protector and teacher, and she became a symbol of resilience, courage, and the unyielding power of the human spirit. She learned that even when the world seemed determined to destroy you, survival was not just possible, it was a triumph of will, heart, and spirit. And as they stood on a hill overlooking the valley where her village once stood, the girl understood something profound. Though fire had claimed her home, it had not claimed her spirit. She had risen from the ashes stronger, wiser, and unbroken. She looked at the warrior, now not just a stranger, but a companion, a guide, and a friend. "Where do we go from here?" she asked. He smiled, eyes reflecting the sunrise. "Wherever life takes us. But remember this, you carry the strength of survival within you, always." And in that moment, the girl, once lost in the ashes of despair, felt a spark of hope ignite into a flame that would never be extinguished. The journey had begun, and with courage, guidance, and the unshakable will to endure, she knew she could face whatever lay ahead. The fire behind them had burned their past, but ahead, a horizon of possibility stretched wide and open, and together, they stepped forward, unbroken, into a new life forged from the ashes of the old. The forest was quiet, but the quiet was deceptive. Every rustle of leaves, every distant bird call seemed to echo with memories of fire and loss. The girl, now stronger and more alert than the day she had crawled from the ashes, walked beside the Apache warrior with a confidence she had never known. Yet beneath her steady steps, her heart still thumped with the fear that lingered in the shadow of what she had endured. As they traveled, the warrior spoke little, but each word carried weight. "The world is full of those who would take without thought, who leave destruction behind. You must always remember that survival is more than avoiding death. It is protecting what remains of your heart and spirit." She nodded, absorbing the lesson with a mix of gratitude and solemnity. Her eyes scanned the landscape, alert to the slightest movement, to the faintest indication of danger. She was no longer just a frightened girl. She had become a survivor, someone who understood the fragility and power of life. Hours into their journey, they came upon a clearing where the wind carried the faint scent of smoke different from the fire that had consumed her village. Her stomach tightened. Could it be another raid? Another threat? The warrior motioned for her to stay low, crouching beside her as he scanned the surroundings. From the underbrush, movement emerged, a small group of people, ragged and cautious. Their eyes widened at the sight of the warrior, but something in his posture and demeanor commanded respect. The girl stepped slightly forward, curiosity mingling with wariness. One of the strangers, a woman, spoke in a trembling voice. You survived?" The warrior nodded solemnly. "Yes, and she did too." He gestured to the girl, whose gaze met theirs with a mixture of pride and apprehension. The strangers, recognizing strength and resilience, lowered their guard. They shared their story. They were survivors from a village farther east, fleeing the same raiders who had destroyed her home. Hearing her tale, their eyes filled with understanding and sorrow. For the first time, the girl realized she was not alone in her suffering. Others had endured, others had lost, and together they could find a path forward. The warrior studied them carefully. "We must move quickly. These raiders are ruthless, and they will not stop until they believe all have been broken." Together they traveled, forming a small band of survivors. Each step was cautious, each night spent in quiet vigilance. The girl, once helpless, now took on responsibilities, learning not just to survive, but to lead, to protect, to guide others through danger. One night, as they camped beneath the stars, she sat beside the warrior, who had remained silent for hours. Finally, she asked, her voice soft but steady, "Do you think I can ever go back?" The warrior looked at her, eyes reflecting the flickering firelight. "Back?" he asked. "To the village?" She nodded. "To remember, to reclaim, to honor those we lost." He paused, considering. "The past shapes us, but it does not define us. What happened there cannot be undone. But the strength you carry now, The courage you have found allows you to move forward. Honor them not by returning to ashes, but by living, by surviving, by ensuring that their memory is not forgotten. Her chest tightened with emotion. For the first time, she felt a sense of purpose beyond mere survival. She would not only endure, she would protect. She would lead and she would remember. Days later, they were confronted directly by the raiders, their horses trampling the earth as they charged. The warrior acted swiftly, guiding the group to the edge of a narrow canyon. Using the terrain to their advantage, they created barriers and distractions, allowing the women and children to escape while he and the girl held off the attackers. Her hands trembled as she wielded a small weapon the warrior had entrusted to her, but she fought with determination born of desperation and survival. Each strike, each movement, each calculated decision reminded her of the fire she had crawled from, of the pain she had endured, and of the promise to never be powerless again. By the time the sun rose, the raiders had been driven off, but the girl was changed. No longer simply a survivor, she was a fighter, a protector, someone who had faced death and terror, and had come through stronger. The warrior placed a steady hand on her shoulder. "You are ready," he said. "Ready to face what comes next, not just as a survivor, but as someone who shapes her destiny." For the first time since the ashes, she felt not only hope, but pride. She had faced fire, loss, fear, and violence, and had emerged with her spirit unbroken. Together they continued on their journey, knowing that the path ahead would be difficult, but confident that together they could face whatever shadows of the past still lingered. The sun had barely risen when the forest came, alive with a sense of unease. Birds cried out in alarm. The wind whispered through the trees, and even the girl, now stronger and more vigilant, felt a chill run down her spine. She and the Apache warrior moved cautiously, their group of survivors close behind, each step measured and deliberate. The memory of fire and destruction haunted her, but she no longer let fear dictate her every move. Days of travel had taught her the rhythm of survival, the need to observe, to anticipate, to trust instincts. The warrior had become not just her protector but her mentor, teaching her to read the smallest details, a broken branch, the distant echo of hooves, the subtle change in the wind. She had learned to move silently, to act with purpose, and to confront danger not with panic but with strategy. Suddenly a scream cut through the forest, sharp and terrifying. Her heart jumped into her throat as she sprinted toward the sound, the warrior close at her side. In a clearing ahead, a young survivor was cornered by a group of raiders. Panic flashed in the child's eyes, but the girl, now seasoned by her trials, felt a surge of courage. She would not stand by. With the warrior guiding her, they orchestrated a counterattack. Using the terrain, they flanked the raiders, creating confusion and fear. The girl, though small and still recovering from past injuries, moved with precision. Each action, each decision, reflected the lessons she had learned, not just about survival, but about protecting those who could not protect themselves. The battle was fierce. The raiders, experienced and ruthless, were relentless, but the girl and the warrior fought with a unity born of trust and shared struggle. As the sun climbed higher, the last of the attackers fled, leaving the survivors trembling but alive. For the girl, this was a turning point. She had faced violence not as a victim but as a fighter and emerged victorious. After the encounter, the warrior knelt beside her, placing a steadying hand on her shoulder. "You have grown stronger than you realize," he said. "The fire in you now is not the fire of destruction. It is the fire of survival, courage and resolve." The girl looked around at the survivors, seeing hope and trust reflected in their eyes. She realized that the ashes of her village had given her more than pain. They had given her purpose and a chance to lead and protect. She had risen from despair, forging strength and resilience that could withstand even the harshest trials. As night fell, the group camped near a river, its waters glimmering under the moonlight. The girl sat quietly, reflecting on her journey. She remembered the village, the loss, the fear, and the moments she had thought she would never survive. Yet here she was, not just alive, but capable, strong, and connected to others who had also endured. The warrior joined her by the fire. "You are ready for what comes next," he said. "The world is vast and danger will always exist, but so will hope. You have learned to survive, and now you can help others do the same." She nodded, understanding that her journey was far from over. She had faced the darkness of fire, loss, and violence, but she had also discovered her inner strength, courage, and the power of human connection. She was no longer the frightened girl who had crawled from the ashes. She was a survivor, a protector and a symbol of resilience. The forest around them was calm now, the echoes of the day's chaos fading into the night. Yet in her heart, the girl knew that life's challenges would continue. She also knew that with courage, wisdom, and the guidance of the warrior who had saved her, she could face whatever lay ahead. As the stars shone above, she whispered softly to herself, "I will rise."
Always.
And for the first time since the fire, she truly believed it.